All right, so let's continue on. Now, one thing I want to talk about too is, and I'm doing a bad job of this, is we really should just export this out and then bring it back in. The reason is having something where you're unwrapping everything in the same scene, if you're not already doing it, becomes extremely cumbersome, right? So I'm going to shift right click. I'm going to recombine this. I'm going to press um, W to make sure I'm in move mode. Make sure I've got the whole oven selected. Then I'm going to hold shift and just drag this out and move it to the center of my world. And then I'll just, once I'm done with it, I'll bring it into Substance and remerge it. So I'm holding X here to snap it to my grid. Um, you could sometimes get disoriented with where you are in the scene too. So let's hit F here to focus. Now I want this above the grid line. And then I'm going to do history, freeze transform, and then I'm just going to export selected as a my ASCII file. Um, Now ordinarily we would do it as an FBX if it was to the uh, to our to Substance Painter and so forth. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and delete this one, and I'm going to pause the video and open up the other one. All right, so here we are back in, and you can see we got a pretty good unwrap going already. Um, and what I could do is really just quickly, I'm going to rapid knock out the rest of this unwrapping. So I'm going to look for things that are repetitive. With this one, it's a little unorthodox because what we did is I showed you two different methods of modeling, right? How to cut things in half and mirror it. This one, we didn't do that for the body, but we will. And notice actually that the front of this unit is completely covered. So I'm just going to delete that front face there, which really could come later. And you know what? Let's go ahead and unwrap this back box. Another thing that's we're not going to see is the bottom of the unit, so I'm going to delete that face. So let's hide everything but this cube here. Now we have the top, we have the sides, and we have the bottom. I deleted those two faces. So what I'm going to do, this is a super easy unwrap, is I'm just going to go to edge mode, select these two top edges here. And if I hit Shift X, notice nothing's going to happen because we deleted all the UVs on this unit. So automatic unwrap does a pretty good job of laying out the faces. It doesn't necessarily do the best job of unwrapping, but I'm going to add this as a tool in my bar, and I know I've done that in previous videos, just to see what it gives us. Now, some of the things we want is when you have a face like this and these sides, you want this all to be, the top part to be combined, even though there's a plane change here, just because it'll probably give you, it'll still give you pretty good results. Now that's one way of doing it. Another way to do it is you can keep all of these pieces here in one seamless row. That's another way of doing it. And the other way is just simply the box method. So let's take a look at that. So inside of here, I'm going to double click these four edges, which make up the top grid part, or the top of the grill part rather. And I'm going to go to cut sew. And one of the things we use a lot is move and sew. So I'm going to hold Control and Shift and select that. And actually, it doesn't add it here. Now that I didn't realize that. We'd have to go through other UV tools, which could be up here. Cut UV edges, sew UV edges. Let's see if that allows us to add it. And if I click this, yeah, you can see it added it, but it didn't do the move and sew, which I'm not sure is in this list, unless it's maybe, yeah. So for now, we'll just double click that and then do modify, or I'm sorry, move and sew down here. And that kind of moves them where I want it to be. Now the other thing of it is these edges here, um, it doesn't look like they moved and sewed those edges, right? So if I hit G, you can see it starts to put them together. So I'm just going to go in here and just kind of select one edge and then hold Shift and double click all the way around. So this is kind of a pro tip. And what that does is by holding Shift and selecting all of them, I can do move and sew, and it'll move them all. Now let's take a look at this. If I go to UV mode here, um, we want to rotate this, and then we want to make sure that we're always unfolding this so it's as clean as possible. The next thing I want to do is double click this inside edge, and I want to attach that face there. Move and sew, boom, unfold, just so it keeps it clean. Now the next things we're just kind of going along these edges here. This should, because This top unit is going to be probably something we're going to look at. Say we're doing a VR game or something. Um, we want that to have be the most in the foreground. Now, even the back of the unit, if we're going to leave it against the wall, I really could just delete that. It's up to you whether you want to keep it. I'll show you how to unwrap it, and then I'll maybe delete it later because, um, as I mentioned, like if it's always against the wall, like you want to save geo as much as you can. So what I did essentially is I selected all of these top edges, and then I just went to move and sew. So move and sew, boom, and there it is. So this is one potential way of doing it, and then I just kind of place this somewhere up here and gather all the rest of the items around it. Another way is like, because our edges are going sideways here, it is completely acceptable to just sort of have it like this, right? So if our top edge is, so this is our bottom edge, right? So let's delete this back face and let's find the top edge here. So this edge is at the bottom, which is good, and that edge is at the bottom. So I'm going to double click these and just stack them next to each other like that, making sure they're not overlapping, but they're very close together. And then this one right here. All right, let's kind of move this just below here. Now my grid was off for some reason in this file, and then what I tend to do is just kind of transform it. Let's leave that here, and then I just put my pivot at the bottom for a second while I have the multiple items selected, because what it does is you can move these around by the pivot point. See that? Um, but let's see. You can also do this arrange and layout here, which, or I'm sorry, line and snap. So I kind of like snap it to the bottom according to where that initial one is, and it fits it pretty good in that box. Now, these are not super important. There are other elements in the front of the oven that I care about. I'm not sure if I called it a fridge earlier, but um, for example, like really, we only need one of these. This handle is pretty important, but I'm going to actually insert an edge loop. Let's go to our front view here and just make sure this loop that I'm adding here lines up. I'm going to nudge this back in. That's kind of weird. It's kind of got off kilter a little bit. And so with this, let's say we want to unwrap one of these handles. These are going to be really easy. So let's hide everything but this. I'm going to hit F to focus. And yeah, let's go ahead and rotate this a little bit here and just kind of move it back. I didn't rotate the whole thing because I like that this has a little bit of a rotation to it. It's more of a preference than a this has to happen type thing. So for this, because it's pretty cylindrical, almost spherical, there's a couple ways you can unwrap this. You can unwrap it so that this whole thing moves around the sides like a cylinder, or we could just straight out go to mapping, just planar map this on Z rather, and then just unfold it. So I double click the whole thing and then just click my unfold, boom. And that's actually okay. The other way to do it, which you'll probably see a lot more if you look at any people's unwraps on the internet, is they double click this thing. I'm gonna hit Shift X to cut it. And I don't know what is going on with my cuts today. Let's see, cut it. You know what, maybe it's not, oh, you know what? It's not showing it just wasn't showing the edge for me. Let's see. Yeah, that's our UV edge thing. It just wasn't showing, but it's there. And then I'll like just select some random couple edges here and Shift X those. And then just if I re-unfold it, now you'll see it'll line up more like that. So either way is fine. I'm going to keep it this way because it makes it a little bit more portable where it's all one unit. Let's get rid of that cut. All right, so with this, I'm just going to scale this down. And because I know it sits a little bit closer to the door handle down here, just going to put it down here. And same thing here. Let's hide everything but this front piece. Going to go to edge mode, select this edge, hold shift, double click this edge. Let's hit F to focus. And if you ever get this thing where you're zooming in and it does this weird thing where you can't see anything, go to view, select your camera, and then you can play with these angles of view, right? So here's our focal length. Let's say we make sorry, not our focal length, our near and far clip. So if I hit 0 for my near clip plane, see how it like really lets me get as far as I want? And then for my far clip, I usually just throw a bunch of zeros in there. All right, so let's go back to our UV editor. And looks like this needs to be unwrapped. So I'm going to double click this, shift right click mapping, planar map that on Z. Go to edge mode, select the top edge, holding shift, double click this, and then I'm going to hit shift X, go to UV, double click the whole thing, and then unfold it. Hitting F to focus as I go. All right. All right, let's go ahead and go to face mode, double click all of these. And shift right click and just separate them out. So I'm going to go to extract faces. And what I tend to do is with this, actually let's extract this one too. We'll add it back later and you'll start to see that your outliner tends to get screwed up. So I'm going to combine this and then delete these guys out and then move this. Just kind of moving them in place. Not too worried about scaling things down because when I scale things down, they the texture looks better if the UVs are bigger and it's a smaller item. So it's not a big deal about having to re-unwrap something like that. And then just delete these. Now, honestly, I could just kind of combine these two and then mirror them later. So I'm just going to go ahead and leave that. Let's just for now, I guess, combine. Let's leave them separate, but I just want to see where I'm at. So that looks pretty good. Let's go ahead and unwrap this piece, and then we'll call it for this video. So with this, there's a lot of stuff going on here. Like with this, I've got a lot of geometry that should be deleted because it's hidden. So let's go ahead and get rid of those. So that's this top geometry here. That should go, and this should go, and this is going to be a really easy unwrap. So mapping that on Z. And this is actually a very important piece because we're going to be baking out a lot of the ambient occlusion from this. So we want this to have a substantial amount of surface area here. So let's see where it sits in combination. So these two I'm probably going to, let's grab these. I'm going to move these, I'm going to scale these UVs a bit more down and move them over. And notice that I selected all three of those when I moved it because if I just did one, it wouldn't, it would give us a little bit of a trouble. All right, same thing with this. I'm actually going to delete this one out and then just duplicate and move these UVs. So let's hide everything but this over here. And with this one, I have this inside face that doesn't need to be there. And then what I'm going to do is map this on Z. And my cuts are really just going to be these right here. Come on, there we go. And then I'll shift X that. Bloop. And then I'm going to go to unwrap this. Did not want to let me double click it. There it is. I'm going to make this a little bit tinier. It's just going to have like a chrome texture on it. And then what you can do is face mode, extract this. Oh, looks like there we go. And then for this one, let's center pivot. I'm going to go ahead and just hold shift and duplicate it. But with this one, because when we go to bake out textures, it's going to look weird. Like the positioning of it, like where it intersects, what I want to do is I'm going to actually just duplicate this bottom one and bring it up. So let's select both here. And then in my UV mode, I'm going to bring up my bottom one and just stack it. Because these are going to have different textures, these top and bottom ones. All right, so let's start to combine the pieces that we know are unwrapped. So shift right click combine. And then what's left is, let's see, let's separate this out again. I know that can get a little bit cumbersome. This. And it's nice to go from top to bottom because then you could just, select, let's try that again. There we go. Actually, this piece here, now that I'm looking at it, I could really just delete this. And actually just delete that whole piece and then duplicate this again below here. Actually, because the insertion of this is pretty much the same as this going inside of here when we go to bake out our texture, I really could just copy this one, scale it vertically a little bit, and then I don't have to unwrap this one at all because it's the same shadows are going to come inside this thing as this one. Maybe I'll get a little bit of handle, something from the handle, but it's not really going to be noticeable. So this is kind of a nice freebie. So we don't have to unwrap all of that. So let's select all of these, this. There we go, Control Shift to grab all of these. And I think that's everything that's unwrapped. The rest of this is not. All right, so I'm going to combine this just for now. These are eventually going to get extracted out at the end and then duplicated special. This handle, let's go ahead and go to our front view and insert an edge loop here. And then, yeah, I'll end this video here. I know it's getting a little long. So we'll hopefully knock out the rest in the next video.